There we go. Weird message. All right. Well, again, thank you all for coming out today. For those of you who are hoping this was going to be last weekend, look at that. I put the wrong date on the bottom anyway. Well, welcome back to Voices of the Earth, Journeys of the Mystics. Really excited about today's offering. Have a lovely guest to join with me here. And yeah, really looking forward to sharing a little bit more about this concept. And partly I'm calling this the Irish Camino, partly because that's some verbiage that people can understand, a long walk that is done not only with intent, but as a pilgrimage and as something that is an ancient pilgrimage at that. So part one, really want to open today, as I often like to do, is kind of set like a tone, something that gives us an understanding of the essence of what I'm seeking to embellish today in our conversation. So I'm going to open up with this quote here, one of my favorite quotes that really comes to life on pilgrimage in deep ceremony, and hopefully for most of us that have healthy families, also this understanding that at the level of the world, here we are. There is yours and there is mine. Yet at the beginning of the spiritual path, mine is yours and yours is mine. Yet on the path itself, there is no mine, there is no yours. And at the end of the path, there is no me and no you. And so this is our place marker for the day. This is the essence of how we're beginning. And if you don't mind, if you just came in, please mute your lines so that we don't pick up background noises. One of the things I also want to frame this is into a Celtic context, the idea of the pilgrimage and the flow of the souls, the journey of humanity into that one, into there is no me and there is no you. So starting off with a little bit of Yeats' works with the Order of Celtic Mysteries at the end of the 19th century, and just posing a couple of those precepts here in terms of the founding principles of our great grandmothers and grandfathers who have really set the way for us in this Celtic Renaissance that has been going on for over 130 years. First and foremost, the borders of our minds are ever shifting, and many minds can flow into one another, as it were, and create or reveal a single mind, a single energy. I find that very alive in a lot of the community that I get to share with. Second, the founding principle, the borders of our memories are as shifting, and that our memories are part of one great memory, the memory of nature herself. In respect to Ireland, the memory of Kathleen Houlihan, the essence, the spirit of Ireland, Erin, great mother. And finally, the founding principle, the third founding principle of the Order of Celtic Mysteries, the great mind and great memory can be evoked by symbols. So here we've got the replacement stone at the Hill of Tara. But this is why we're here today. Croagh Patrick, the probably most people would consider the holiest mountain in Ireland. Perhaps that could be academically debated. That's not why we're here today. We're here to learn about this pilgrimage and the journey, this Irish Camino, the Tóchar Phádraig, and while there are some short segments that we're going to learn about today that are already existent, we're going to learn about what is currently being proposed and why I have this lovely guest here to join with us today. So just to give you an overall arc of what we're going to be talking about in our shared time today, first I'm going to introduce myself a little bit more for those of you who don't know me, and then also introduce Elaine. I'm going to give a very brief context on the Camino. Most of you know my wife, Carrie, and I walked the Camino this past fall. I walked the Camino in March with my father, just to kind of set the context of why we're coming to this place of what is being introduced here with this idea of the extension of the Tóchar Phádraig. And also, I'm going to go a little bit more deeply into some of the history and context of the Pilgrim's Path in Ireland, the Tóchar Phádraig as well. Then I'm going to get into a little bit more mind and construct, drawing from my ecological, geological, and nonprofit stakeholder organization conservation planning background, and look at what are some of the proposed routes as depicted via ArcGIS or via geospatial software that I've been working with for the last few weeks. And then I want to give plenty of time for questions and reflections. And we'll close. And then I know there's a couple of people here that have questions about the Temple House retreat this coming summer that we'll be hosting at in the south of Sligo. And before we do the Pilgrim's Walk, for those of you who have already decided you're joining us for that walk this coming July. So first and foremost, just to, I want to introduce our team. So again, I'm Jeremy Shavey, the host. I've been hosting this Voices of the Earth and Journeys of the Mystics now on and off for about 8 or 9 months. And we've had some wonderful speakers from all across the world, with a primary focus in Ireland and Scotland, just because of our interest in the Celtic heritage herein. But as a professional wetland scientist, ecologist, and geospatial conservation planner, I'm very excited to be working on this project. And so when I first started launching into this project and dedication, Elaine Conroy was one of the first people that I reached out to. In my mind, since the beginning of the Tóchar begins at Ráth Cruachan in County Roscommon, and Ráth Cruachan is the sacred center of Connacht, or the west of Ireland, one of the 4 ancient kingdoms of Ireland. And so Elaine is a tour guide and mastermind that helps to coordinate visits to Owenagat. Some of you have been there with me years ago, the Cave of the Cats, or up to the mounds, Croagh. And so when I first reached out to her, I also knew that she was very interested in the restoration of heritage trail routes, etc. So Elaine, thanks for coming out today and braving the storm. If we lose connection, thanks for coming. But do you want to maybe just speak in a little bit, Elaine, while before I get launched off? And everybody will have plenty of time for questions at the end too, but just share a little bit about yourself and why you've been excited and interested in what we're talking about today.
Well, I'm a tour guide now for Ráth Cruachan Visitor Centre the last 6 years now. So I would have returned to college much later, always had a love of heritage, but just in the latter years was able to really make the most of it, and started working, as I said, with Ráth Cruachan. So I think what's great about Ráth Cruachan though is I'm able to learn on the job as well. So that has been fortuitous, especially with mythology. I don't think it's done enough in schools and things like that. And it certainly wasn't done in the archaeology or in the heritage degree that I received to a fine point. So that's what I suppose a bonus about Ráth Cruachan itself. So yeah, as Jeremy said, I take people to the mound itself and then around to Owenagat, and if they're brave enough, I'll bring them all the way in there to the entry point to the other world. We like to construct our tour that it incorporates, I suppose, fact as well as the mythology, the folklore that is connected with the landscape as well. So again, while we touch on various literatures like the Thon and that, we look at the manuscripts and see what they say about it. And of course, we also look at the archaeology, the geophysics, the studies that have been done there to try and really get an overall picture of Ráth Cruachan itself. So it's a bit, I suppose, of all disciplines, as I said, the archaeology, the history, the folklore, as well as that mythology then as well. And it's all the time revealing itself. I suppose there's different aspects then that can be continuously learned as well. We have several conferences throughout the year as well, where we invite community archaeologists. So this could be people that don't necessarily have a degree or anything in archaeology or history, but they just have a love of it. And through that, through their own local heritage, they've worked to preserve that as well. So that's something that's quite important to us. And to myself as well, where I live in South Sligo, there's a vast amount of heritage as well. So I suppose when I went back to college, I used that as an excuse. Any time my CAs came up, I would look at what was in my own locality and try to learn that bit more about it. And sort of uncovered a few things that, as time goes by, we tend to forget about then as well. So I'm quite interested in that. With the community group that I'm with, we've created 3 trails that are based around 3 hilltops in the locality. And the last one there, the third one there, it's over at Mucklety Hill. It's just in the final stages of completion. But we've been trying to see, like, what is the heritage in the area of those hills themselves, be it anything from a battle involving the Kin and Connacht to more modern things like famine and what happened during the 1840s and that. So really a broad spectrum as well, and just trying to keep that knowledge alive, really. So yeah, that's me, I suppose.
Beautiful. And I seem to recall that you live at the foot of Lughnasadh, correct?
I do. Yeah, I'm
Yeah. And
very
so,
lucky. I have a stunning view every morning. You couldn't be in bad form leaving the house anyway, once you see that. And I suppose because of our lovely weather here in the southwest of our south of Sligo, it changes all the time. So it definitely is. It's a different color every morning.
yeah, and some of the folks here on the call today were a part of the small pilgrimage walk that we did from Temple House to the top of Knocknashee and back to Temple House this past
Fantastic.
September. So, just so everyone can acknowledge, Elaine and her team were part of seeing the funds come through and the installation and all of the land owner conversations that allow that new pathway that allows us easy access to the top. So thank you for doing that, and thank you for joining forces and helping to recreate this ancient pilgrim's route that we're talking about today.
Yep.
All right, so why don't we go ahead and open up a little bit here. Just give it a little bit of context in respect to the Camino. So what I'd like to do, first of all, is just open up with an understanding of what is the Camino. I mean, right in this picture here, while walking the way with my father back in March, gives you a very good feeling of what we're looking at. It's literally, Camino means road in Spanish, of course. It's a way, it's a path, but it's got this deeper meaning in the context when it is the Camino de Santiago is the road to Santiago Compostela, the field of stars. And so contextually, you can almost imagine like all of these city and centers as different stars, and these are all the different pathways that trickle in and feed ultimately to Santiago de Compostela, and then eventually out also to Finisterre, or to the ends of the earth, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about here in a moment. But just gives you a beautiful feeling, a sense of just like all the neural pathways, the networks, the aspects of the human mind that coalesce, collect, and come to this one powerful, powerful center that is both sacred to the pre-Christians as well as to the modern day Christian era as well. The thing about the Camino that I feel is really beautiful is the dedication. Whether someone's only walking 100, 120 kilometers, if they're walking 1,000, 2,000 kilometers. My father and I walked 427, I believe, but it's the symbol and the simplicity of the dedication to a spiritual pilgrimage. And albeit not everyone that does the Camino is doing it for spiritual purposes. Some people are doing it just because they can, or because they've heard that it can be really, really amazing. A lot of people walk pilgrimage because they're going through some sort of transition, loss of life, like myself with losing my daughter, or maybe they're in a transition between work, a time where people are looking for something that's dedicated and brings a lot of hyper clarity. Many people find that, some do not. It really depends on intent and why you arrive at something. Got a little bit of a placeholder that kind of ties us into the Celtic world. So prior to St. James' bones being interred at Santiago, Santiago was an ancient grove of oak trees that were minded by, for a lack of better terms, by oracles, by priests and priestesses who were entire with maintaining that grove with its sacred spring emanating, like we have many of the Tóchars, the sacred wells, all across Ireland. And so people would walk from all over Europe to come to this location and then continue on their way out to the end of the earth, to Finisterre, which this is sort of an artistic depiction of, to the end of the earth, where they could sit with the ancient oracles of the sun. Some say there was a large druidic solarium that was once there at the edge of the earth. What I know, as I've spoken to, and some of you have heard before, what I experienced along that whole Camino was what I experienced as the river of souls, just this river of just hundreds of thousands and millions of people who poured themselves in and then continued past Santiago down into the sea. I believe that they stepped then into the Summerlands, into the land beneath the waves. Maybe Manannán then brought them to Ireland, who knows? But just a really sweet context of the Camino. And personally for me, it was really about family, connection, new friendships, sharing the way. And one thing that a Jesuit brother and dear friend of mine introduced the concept to me before doing this pilgrimage, which I would suggest for anyone making intentful pilgrimage anywhere, whether it's the Camino Santiago or it's the Tóchar Phádraig in Ireland, is that you come not only with some intent to open, soften, and flower, but also, like, who are you inviting to walk with you? Literally, who are the physical people that you're walking with? But then also, like, who are either the ancient deities and spirits that you're asking, or who are the saints that you're asking, or maybe it's just the Holy Family that you're asking to walk with you. And so for me, it was also about that deep invitation of the saints that I invited to walk with me, and what each one of those helped me to understand and clarify each day as we move through. So let's pause and bring it into context of why we're here today. The Tóchar Phádraig. So with the Tóchar, we're going to, in the next few minutes, we're going to get a little bit deeper understanding of its historic context, how it's been revitalized, and where things are today, and then what essentially I'm proposing and working on with Elaine and multiple other teams across Mayo, Sligo, and Roscommon in order to help potentially rebirth this gorgeous and ancient pilgrims tradition. And just before I jump into this, as context, the Camino de Santiago was something that had almost died. World War I and World War II and the political theater of Spain and Portugal at the time really made it so that very few walkers, very few pilgrims were still dedicating themselves to the pilgrim's path. And there was some work done, I believe it was I want to say it was in the 60s, but someone can quote me on that. There was a priest in Galicia who dedicated his life to the restoration of the Camino, and now 300,000 to 400,000 people walk it per year. And while walking the Camino, I was hearing this and seeing how many people are walking it, knowing, especially in context also right now, what's going on in the Holy Land, in Israel, in Palestine, in Lebanon. I was going to be walking in Israel with an Israeli brother of mine this coming February, but it's not really a very safe place to be walking right now, which in part is what really stimulated people walking these ancient pilgrims paths in the Iberian Peninsula, or Spain and Portugal, and also in Ireland, because here was the context, the raw wilds, yet the sanctuaries of the regional people that helped sustain. So context. This is a really lovely time to be considering restoring the Tóchar, because there is increasing interest from just general humanity and ecclesiastical, all religions, all spiritual traditions, to walk pilgrimage, to give ourselves, to dedicate ourselves to the quietness of the road and its simple manifest or humanifest of the hurdles and barriers that we perceive in our complex and abstract modern lives, brought to a simple: I am walking, I am praying, I am singing, I'm sharing fellowship, I am on my own, whatever it might be, the quietness of the road. So the Tóchar Phádraig is a very, very old. Some people say it's 1,500 years old. Some people say it's 3,500 years old. There's a lot of context, but here we are, Ireland. So just wanted to kind of start in context. So Ráth Cruachan here in County Roscommon is where it is believed that this ancient way, this Tóchar, began. And then it stretched across Connacht out into the Connemara, into the what is now the southernmost portion of County Mayo. So also in context, this is, like right in the center of where this line is. Tóchar is where my mom's family all comes from. So I'm walking through heritage lands here as part of this. And so it ends at Croagh Patrick. And so Croagh Patrick is this gorgeous metaquartzite mountain. Just in context, I mean, this gives you an idea of the beauty of sanctuary in Ireland. Not only is it believed that this is one of the holiest mountains in Ireland, some say the holiest mountain in Ireland, probably the mountain walk. I mean, hundreds of thousands of people do short pilgrims routes to the top of this mountain every year. And we're going to get a little context of that in a moment. But also, this mountain, as far as I know, and Elaine, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but if, about 7 or 8 years ago, might have been longer, maybe 10 years ago, it was discovered there was a massive gold vein running through this mountain. It was estimated somewhere between $300 and $400 million worth of gold in this mountain. And everyone in Ireland said, nope, no one will ever mine this. And, just again, the context of Holy Mountain, metaquartzite, gold, like here is the sort of the apex of both ancient as well as Christian mythology and holy place. So the route, as I have now measured it with GIS and not using the old dental floss trick on ordnance maps, which is what I did the first go. I had 165 kilometers, so I was only 3 off, not bad. 168-kilometer proposed route that we'll be talking a little bit more about today. But let's get some context first, so we can know a little bit about the whys and the shape of the understanding of this holy mountain. So in ancient times, Clorin Aigle, and Elaine, I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, and you can help me out if I didn't, but it used to be called Cruachan, just similar as in Ráth Cruachan, simply means cone, as far as I know. Anything you want to correct me on with that, Elaine?
We usually say it means a mound.
Yeah, like a mound
or a hill.
Conical,
yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and so basically, and then Aigle, most people associate with meaning is a version of eagle. So it's like the eagle's mound or the eagle's cone. And so this mountain is very conically shaped and was a very strong epicenter of pre-Christian as far back into past the Bronze Age, probably even into the Neolithic and Megalithic, was a very powerful and sacred center. It's believed that the feast of Lughnasadh was celebrated up there. It's also believed that there may have been similar to Finisterre in Galatia, that this was also an observatory, a place where people would commune with the ancient gods. And so in the center, I also have depicted here an artistic rendering, although a little pixelated, sorry for that, is Lu, or the Samildanak, the master of all skills, one of the key players in the Irish pantheon. And then also it's believed that Croagh Patrick was also one of the ancient homes of Crom Duv or Crom Cruachan, and who was the ancient earth fertility god, pre-Tuatha. And so there's, Lughnasadh, there's of course this dynamic interplay of Lu and Crom, like essentially wrestling over the harvest and over the souls of humanity, if you will. So that gives us a little context to the ancient aspect of the site. So in respect to that, of course, when Ireland was covered almost entirely with hardwood forests, 3,500 years ago, people were walking on these pilgrimages to the top of Croagh Patrick through these ancient woods. And now, of course, it's known, of course, that the Druids were walking these, and then there were the beings that were here before, the indigenous, the Iberians, the Fomorians, however you want to frame it. We got this fantastic context of people coming to the mountain during like the classic in Celtic era, rising into the early Christian era. It's known, and at least Elaine, maybe you can help me out here too, but I believe that oftentimes it was said that there was a chariots road that actually went from Ráth Cruachan all the way out to Croagh Patrick. Anything you would add there?
I don't have much information on that actual aspect itself. We are familiar with the concept that they believe this King's Road or this King's Pilgrimage route was going from Cruachan to Croagh Patrick itself. That's about, I suppose, as much. I suppose to be something similar you're talking about would be Corlea trackway or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I suppose as much as we cover is that it was like a king's route from the royal site to Croagh Patrick then as well.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so then come 5th century and the scattering of the wild early Christian fathers and mothers who came into Ireland. Patrick decided that he was going to walk this route all the way up to the top of the mountain. And then I believe he spent 40 days on top of the mountain fasting. And some stories would say he was up there stamping out the snakes and the demons from Ireland. My particular variant of the story is Patrick went up there and did his fast and so impressed the ancient ones that they decided to come into union. All context, all what you find in tracking. But either way, Patrick, in a sense, either A, claimed the mountain for Christianity, or B, helped it to evolve into the modern era, into the new faith traditions that were rising out of the Mediterranean and the Middle East and sweeping like mad across the world. Either way, let's bring it into a little bit more modern context, last 150 years or so, in a nearby community about the halfway mark between Ráth Cruachan and Croagh Patrick, at the hill of Knock, there was a sighting of the great mother of the Queen of Ireland, the Virgin, which really started to bring a lot of energy into the area. Simultaneously, for those of you who are familiar with your historic context, you got to remember in the mid 1800s, you had this fear that the Irish language, the Gaeilge, was dying out, and there was an emergence of all of these amazing translators who brought the ancient mythos and all these ancient tomes into the modern era and translated them into English. And so toward the end of the 19th century, of course, we've got the rise of the Celtic Twilight, the Order of Celtic Mysteries, all these amazing playwrights who revolutionized and helped to really fuel the strength and power of the Irish nation and as individuals to really to rise up after hundreds of years of oppression and to really begin to reclaim um, ourselves as a nation, as a people. And so during that same time period of the Order of Celtic Mysteries rise, you also had this amazing efforts from a lot of the church fathers and mothers. And so Archbishop Dr. Healy of Tuam, Dr. There's another priest. I want to say McDonald, but I'm not. Don't quote me on that. These two guys started realizing the importance of Croagh Patrick, and so they recreated a 7 kilometer pilgrimage to the top from Clew Bay, from a little village called Merse. We'll be able to see that spatially here in a little bit. And then in the 1980s, late 1980s, Father Frank Fahey at Ballintuber Abbey did a concerted effort to stretch the Tóchar and bring it out to, I believe he stretched out to 32 to 35 kilometers, depending on a few turns here and there as you take. And Father Fahey is still with us, and I've been speaking with him, and he's really excited about what we're doing. And so I'll be meeting with him this winter as well. They're just spatial context. We're in the west of Ireland. Up in the upper left corner is Clew Bay. The biggest urban area is Westport. Wonderfully thriving community. And so this main red trackway is the existing Tóchar. Now, a couple pieces of context. So the arrow that I just brought up here gets us to the summit, to the peak of Croagh Patrick, which is the goal, the objective. And I put the second pin on here. You can get a context. So this is what the first restoration was, about a 6 to 7 kilometer route that made its way to the top. And then in 1905, they built a little chapel on the top. And then in the late 1980s, Father Fahey, I put this pin here at Ballintuber at the Abbey, added again like this 32 to 35 kilometer Tóchar that follows along the traditional route through a lot of the, again, pre-Christian as well as Christian sacred sites on the way to the top of the mountain. In contemporary times, a couple things I think that are really important besides, some of the things that Elaine has already introduced that she's working on in the south of Sligo and with the visitor center. This whole region in the western portion of this, the Connemara, extending out into the foothills and plains, is currently being proposed as a UNESCO geopark. And so it's called the Joyce Country and the Western Lakes. And so I'm in communication with these folks as well. They're very excited about what we're working on here. To have this ancient 3,500-year-old pilgrimage route come right into the heart of their pilgrims riding. It ties, and the Tóchar Phádraig will also tie into what's called the Western Way, which is a long hikers or walkers trail that goes along the west coast and through the mountains. Sister Maureen Lally, she has been an absolute gem to work with. Elaine, do you know Sister Maureen?
No, I'm not familiar.
Okay, well, you'll meet her soon with all this stuff. She is a firecracker. I love her. She is, every time I talk to her, I'm crying. She's just so full of brightness. She has been a big part of not only the Tóchar Valley Rural Community Network, but also the Croagh Patrick Heritage Trail, who we're also coordinating with on this particular project. So yeah, Sister Maureen has really helped to support a lot of the local farmers and producers of cheeses and breads and whatnot to help be in support to pilgrims walking along the way. So again, just some contemporary aids. There's a lot of other allies that we're coordinating with, but these are some of the main players currently besides myself and Elaine. So this is the extension of the Tóchar that uh, that's Sister Maureen and the Croagh Patrick Heritage Trail have put back together. So again, just kind of giving you some pins on where that starts and stops on the far right, or in the east at the village of Bala, and then it winds along through the plains and bogs and hills of the eastern part of Mayo, and then ends up uh, crossing paths with the Tóchar. So in terms of what we're building out, we're going to be these 62 kilometers are going to be a very, very important part of the extension of what we're working on. I put that pin in there just to give you an idea and where Ballantuber, where the Abbey is, and where the Father Frank Fahey is based. So let's take a break from mind and just remember a little bit of heart, like the whys, like all the whats are important, but like the whys, like why I'm doing this fellowship, like what I found in my pilgrim brothers and sisters while walking the Camino was such a gold, such gem. um, it's changed my life, and that's why I'm dedicating myself to this service, to this volunteer effort to help restore this ancient pilgrimage. But also a renewal of faith too. Like one of the things Elaine and I have talked about is like the beauty of our of our Christian heritage, of our Catholic cultural heritage, and yet at the same time, like the beauty of understanding like our ancient heritage and where we're going. And so I share this picture. This is my father actually, and this picture was right when I was coming up out of the into the hills of Lyon while walking the Camino. And I we're walking along this fence, and I started seeing all these stick crosses. And the at first I felt like, oh my gosh, like it was the first forest. This is this oak woodland that we're walking through. My first feeling was just like, oh my gosh, this is where everybody's like trying to like keep the spirit of nature away from the path or something like that. But then it just kept going. And then I realized it was like, oh my gosh, this is like a mile and a half to 2 miles of people making towels, the Franciscan cross, as well as just so your classic cross or crossroads cross on the fence. And as I was walking up the hill, I realized, oh, this is where people realize that they're not alone. And so put it into I terms. This is where I realized I was not alone in the world. I did not need to be carrying the burden of my pains and sufferings on my own, that everyone has their pains and sufferings. And if we can just lay them down for a moment and come back together as brothers and sisters of humanity and be able to do things that are larger than life. And so it's just a really good reminder of of this gift. And more than anything, I think is gratitude, the gratitude of being able to share in doing something that's larger than life. The simple act of walking hundreds of miles or hundreds of kilometers, of doing that in a way that's powerful, simple, quiet, again, life changing, just feeling that deep sense of gratitude. Now let's settle back in. This is looking down. For any of you that have walked the Reek, you'll remember this part. This is where you slip and slide on your way down when you're like taking steps up, and you're like, ooh, is the path gonna hold me? Really beautiful. This is the last ascent towards the top, so folks are going down and coming up here. But what I want to do for the next few moments is share the proposed route. And so again, just context, file us in geospatially where we are, starting at Ráth Cruachan, 168 kilometers out to Croagh Patrick. And so the next slide, basically what I've done in GIS is I've broken these up according to stages. So for any of you who have walked Caminos in the past, you will recognize the concept of a stage being a day, like what is reasonable to do within a day's time. So each of the stages, each of the days on here corresponds with one of the colors. And of course, because I also, much of my youth grew up in the rainbow tribe and the rainbow community, I thought, let's make a rainbow, one color for each day. And so basically, you see the numbers popping up on here, again, just to kind of correlate with what I just shared with you. We've got 8 stages that we're looking at for walking this. That being said, I'm going to pause for a moment. I am going over in February to walk this for the first time. I'll be walking it from roughly February 10th to the 17th. So I'll be meeting with Elaine and Father Fahey and Sister Maureen and all the lads up in Sligo and folks at Temple House, as well as the folks from the Geopark, the Irish Pilgrim Society. It's going to be a really lovely go. And part of the reason why I'm doing that is because the longevity of this, of being able to just walk it in July with those of you who are planning to join for that pilgrimage, so that we have a really sound understanding of where the route is going to go and where micro adjustments might be made, because I am making these judgment calls based on time in the field and ordnance maps and some landowners' conversations, and then experience of walking the Camino twice and what that can feel like. So this is a lot of words, but don't worry about there won't be a quiz. I wanted to just kind of give you a quick concept of what we're looking at, and then each one of these stages I'm going to be breaking out. So Elaine, this is a little bit of an update from the last route that I sent to you, but now I've talked to accommodations, I've talked to folks on the ground, and so for now this makes the most sense. And so there'll be some refinement of that in February when I walk, because I will be bringing a sub-meter accurate GIS field device with me at that time, GPS, GNSS receiver, which will really help set up a trackway for others to follow in the future. So the first stage, stage 1. So with the first stage, we're walking from Ráth Cruachan to Ballinameen. And so we're looking at 10.6 miles or 17.1 kilometers. So a shorter day on this first go. One of the things I learned walking the Camino several times is it's no good to walk 16 to 22 miles on your first day. Like work into it. And so as we go through the stages here, with our next little bit of time together, each one of these stages, I have this little list of bullets of some of the sites that you would pass or where we would be starting. And so when looking at this, you might notice, there's this big jaunt to the west, then to the north, then back to the east, then back to the northwest again. Part of this is because as I'm first putting this together, before we can make routes that would go through bogs and woodlands, there's got to be bridges, there's all sorts of infrastructure and financial resources that would be necessary to make those happen. So this is the way we get across one of the rivers and through one of the bog areas, is by going a bit around it, but also going through it to where there's a bridge that a farmer has going across the stream so that we can get there. I think one of the things that's important here is that long term, this might refine. There might be great landowner agreements on routes and pathways that can be created to go through other sites. Again, for now, this is what makes sense. Most likely, this will be a little bit refined before we all walk in July, but the boots on the ground and the initial walk in February will help to refine this so that all of us can make our way. And then we'll see what happens in the future with it. So the second stage is from Ballinameen to Monasterdon. And again, a nice even day, 11 miles or 17.7 kilometers. One of the two key features here that I felt were really important in the sense of, diving into the archives, and then also vision. When walking the Camino the first time, again, I mentioned a Jesuit brother and friend of mine who invited me to invite what saints, holy beings, spirits that would walk with me, and a Nevatrak, or a Saint Attracta from the southeast of Ireland, played a major role in my pilgrimage on the Camino. And I know that from the archives, what we can understand, if you have anything to add, Elaine, let me know. But my understanding of Saint Attracta was that she took the veil from Saint Patrick himself, and her main focus was the creation of hostels, places for pilgrims to stay on their way. So, albeit to me, it makes sense to go through. So, Killaracht, Holywell, these are renditions of the Anglicization of her Irish name. And so we're winding through her ancient parish, which, as far as I know, there was a hostel there that ran for almost 1,100 years. And just as context, part of the reason why some of these hostels are not existent anymore is because of the, how should we say it and be politically correct, the incursion of Oliver Cromwell and what he did to the Irish gentry, albeit the destruction of the Irish gentry, and therefore the loss of resources that a lot of the church had. So where churches weren't destroyed as part of the Cromwell subjugation of Ireland, a lot of churches, monasteries, abbeys, hostels eventually could not support themselves financially because they were not getting the donations, because the chieftains and the other Gaelic aristocracy did not have the resources or were no longer around in order to help support. So part of this journey also has been the threading together of what is existing now in terms of places to stay, accommodations, places to eat, etc. But I think my second favorite part of this particular stage is the fact that it walks through Lughnasadh. And as far as I know, Lughnasadh means Gara means neighbor. And so if you look at it, it's actually two lakes, but at some point the hydrology was probably different, probably higher. Maybe it was seasonally one lake, sometimes not. But we're getting to walk that line between where it says Croagh, which is a human-made island on a lake, and Megalithic Tomb. We've got this whole long, thin stretch of land that we get to walk that's low and really close to the water. And so we get to walk between the two neighbors. So it's like this gateway of the reflection of the above and the below as we wind our way into Monasterden. So picking up here on day 3, we've got a little bit longer of a track, 17.6 miles or 28.3 kilometers. Still working out some details here because the place that we'll be staying in Monasterden only has 3 or 4 rooms. There's another place that's like 2 miles down the road, a little bit closer to Balladoreen, which of course would then shorten this segment to about 14.5 miles. So there may be some adjustment that happens here with time, but for now, this is what I'll be doing in February. Couple sites initially in the day that I'm very excited about. Saint Attracta's Holywell, which, while simple, is a very, very potent place. And then there's a very classy fairy fort solarium, Grianon, called Tóchar Phádraig. And that is, have you ever been there, Elaine? No?
No, I don't believe so, no.
Okay, yeah, so some of you have spent some time in the Grianons with me down in the southwest in Kerry, or up in Donegal near Derry as well. So, this picture up in the right underneath where it says Stone Fort is an aerial from a drone. You can see beautiful old beech and oak and ash trees, and then it's it's a stone ring, oftentimes called a cashel. Um, may have been used for military defense at some point, but also likely were ritual grounds as well as council and community meeting places. So this day takes us past Stones, other fairy forts made from earth, oftentimes surrounded by old forests, Celtic crosses, holy wells, and then brings us to Urlar Loch and Clona Loch as well. And so this is the end of stage 3. Um, from Urlar or Urlar Abbey, on the 4th day, we make our way to Knock Shrine. So if you recall, Knock Shrine, Knock is where in the mid, like 3/4 of the way into the 19th century, the Virgin Mary, or the Queen of Ireland, as she's often referred to, at Knock, revealed herself multiple times. And so just a beautiful 19th century incarnation of the essence of the Divine Mother, of manifesting herself and giving hope to an area that was very impoverished. And so, bringing that light in. So on the way on this day, passing megalithic tombs, barrows, churches, bogs, castles, mountain lake, etc. So again, a little bit shorter of a day, 14.5 miles or 23.3 kilometers. And now we're starting to get into bog country and a little bit of rolling topography. So for the 5th day, when we leave Knock, we're doing a little bit shorter length today for 2 reasons. One, we've had a couple of days that are a little bit longer lengths, and in this little village of Facefield, which very un-Irish name, I don't know. Do you know any of the history of Facefield, Elaine, where that name may have come from?
No, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's
Facefield.
fine.
No, I'm not familiar with that area
Yeah,
at all.
so there is a traditional pilgrims hostel here in Facefield, and so I've had a really wonderful time connecting with the folks there, and they're excited to host us and excited for this restoration effort as well. So this day takes us past, again, a lot of the fairy forts, and there's actually a dolmen along this particular route, several castle ruins. Be a great day to get out into the bog country. One of the things I want to say actually before going much further is that, up until this point, much of this track that I've been able to put together is threading through either farm tracks. So what in the States we would call a 2-track, or like a Forest Service road. So basically you've got a place where 2 wheels from vehicles or tractors have made an impression into either gravel, chippings, or earth. And so, a lot of these are 2 tracks. Some of them are small, like 1-lane country roads. For those of you who have traveled in Ireland, you're very familiar and comfortable with those. Most of you are comfortable with my driving on those in Ireland as well, having been doing that for 24 years now. I think that there's a couple places you'll see, like the N17. The N17 is a main through road, also classic in a lot of songs from this part of Ireland as well. But wherever, like, we frequently on like a major road like that, we are just crossing it. So there'll be very few places, very few incidents where you will, someone would be walking on a major road. They're all going to be little farm lanes or 2 tracks. So jumping ahead to stage 6. So now from Facefield to Bala, we're still on some of these trackways, these farm tracks and minor sub-roads. But when we get to Bala, this is where we connect into the Croagh Patrick Heritage Trail. And so arrangements with landowners have already been made. I would say about 1/3 to half of this trackway from Bala to Ballintuber Abbey are on existing trails and pathways through farm fields, through bogs, through forests. Um, so really, really, really lovely transition. It's my hope that we can do this for the few stages before this with given time. But obviously, with this coming July, we'll most likely be walking something like what I've put together here. Um, so there are some beautiful woodlands that we traverse through in this part, and we're starting getting hints occasionally of Croagh Patrick and the mountains in the Connemara at this point, a few days out. So the next length from Ballintuber Abbey to Ahawar, I'm still working on that. Sister Maureen will have me.
Gower.
Yes. So this particular portion is where now we are on what Father Fahey has reconstructed and has created agreements with all of the landowners. So we're almost on no two tracks or farm roads here. There will be some of it. I mean, again, going through and recording all of this in GIS and like being like, field by field, piecing it together. I do know that we will be still on some during this track. Now, for those of you who are ever interested in doing this on your own time, maybe you're not going with us in July, or you just want to show up and just do this segment, you do need to stop in Ballintuber Abbey and register, and then they do have a requisite fee for walking the land, and I think that it's 25 euros, and that fund is basically going into the upkeep, maintenance of the trail, and also continued community building. So along this way, actually, I found Father Fahey produced a book over sometime back in the 1980s. I don't know if any of you can actually see that because it's very old. I was able to find a used version of it online. The Tóchar Phádraig, a Pilgrim's Progress. And so this is a gorgeous book with all like hand-drawn maps by Father, and also talks about all of the stations that are going to be along the way. So you'll notice again, like throughout all of these images that I've been sharing, there's these little red pins. In some places you'll see, like in the lower right corner, you'll see, well, that one's kind of highlighted with turquoise blue, but most of them are not. It looks like a little like Native American arrowhead or a spear point or like a scraping tool. I am going to be recording some of those locations along the way as well, just so that people can have an understanding of what's coming. Because some people like to think about those, other people will just be walking just to walk, but I like a little of both. And so more information will be available after I walk in February as well, because I'll be able to record these as well as little side routes that go out to holy wells or other neat caves or things like that that are along the way. From my understanding, having not walked this section yet, I have walked the top of Croagh Patrick 5 or 6 times now. One time it was 3 times in one day. That on this particular road, Clondalkin Hill, when you get to the top of that hill, right before you drop down into Achagaur, is that where you can you get your first just super omnipotent view of Croagh Patrick herself. So stage 7, and then the last stage is what takes us to the summit. Shortly after leaving Ahavaur in the morning, we get to this really amazing, for those of you who live in Western North Carolina and are familiar with Jotakullas Rock out near the university in Western North Carolina University, Jotakulla Rock, there's lots of stones that have, sort of like some people would say, like the star maps on them, like the Bohi stone I can't remember what the village is right there, but Brathloon Woods is what wraps around it. Ancient um, Neolithic site, was also used as a mass rock um, during the penal laws time. But along this route, we're climbing up the Reek now. We're climbing up the mountain. On the mountain, there's 3 traditional stations for prayers and respect. Those are indicated on here as well. Leah Benin, the Croagh Patrick summit, and then the Relic Mori. The summit is where most people stop and turn around. So you'll see, I don't know if anybody can see my cursor, but right where a green line comes down from station 1 to the R335, that's the original Pilgrim's route to the summit, created by Archbishop Healy back at the beginning of the 20th century. Um, and so what I've done here, and there were some other alternate routes on the other site, is provided that, because that's an easy way down to get to the completion point of Murrisk. I'm going to continue on the western flank of the Reek so that I can go down to the Relic Mori, which is also a Neolithic site believed to be a holy place to the ancient pre-Christian people, and then to continue down the foot of the Reek all the way along the ridge line to the west before cutting back on the 335, so that kind of making this last little hook or loop. But anyways, just sharing that because the distances that I have at the top vary because of that. So if you walk the whole pink line that is on here, it's almost 17 miles or 27.24 kilometers. If you just walk to the summit and then back down from station 2 to station 1 to Murrisk, again where the 335 is there, then it would be a 12.5 mile day or 20.1 kilometers. And then I think that for those of you who are joining us in July, my mother and father are coming as well. They're actually going to be driving a support vehicle in case anybody gets injured, etc. But I believe that they're planning to walk to the top together. And so that walk from Murrisk is 4.4 miles round trip. Again, just to give you a little bit of context. That was a lot of words. I'm probably not going to talk the rest of the day after this. So again, just context. Here we are, Ireland, beginning at Ráth Cruachan, stretching out across mostly Mayo, but a little Roscommon and Sligo as well, out to Croagh Patrick for a 168 kilometer walking pilgrimage. And again, the idea with this is Carrie and I and a few others were going to be doing this in July anyways, and the more we talked about it, it sounded like a lot of people were coming. I think I don't know how many people are coming at this point. We've got quite a few people who are saying, yes, I'm in. Definitely let me know if you're interested. I don't have, quote, a cost for this because this isn't like a facilitated trip or program. Basically, I'm doing all this work pro bono, paying for the trip over there in February out of pocket. And then just, this is my gift back to Ireland. I've been waiting for a legacy project like this to work on with Ireland. Many of you know I worked on a massive conservation effort in the highlands of Guatemala and helped protect thousands and thousands of acres of virgin cloud forest down there, and that is thriving and doing well. So now that my daughter has passed, I am dedicating myself to this. It might take years. I don't know. Let's see what happens, Elaine, huh? So what I also want to close with before we get into questions and answers, and it looks like I did pretty good on time here. The next time I host one of these Voices of the Earth, Journeys of the Mystics, probably be in March, maybe April. I'll get something out to everyone again. And what I'm going to be doing is reporting back, basically like, here's everything that happened. We'll be able to get more idea of pictures. I'll be able to actually show topography because I'm going to be recording elevations as I go as well. So just give a little bit more honing and refinement. And then I think from that, then I will have material that is easier to present to organizations in Ireland that could potentially help this to flourish in perpetuity. Just a couple plugs here. Visit Ráth Cruachan Visitor Center, and you can see Elaine, and they have a wonderful, wonderful museum there, and exhibits, and a wonderful bookstore. Some of you, or most of you, know on the far right, my book is in print right now. Official launch is at the end of February. We're going to be doing a soft launch for that here at Imbolc with our public celebration in the Asheville area on February 3rd. So you'll be able to get copies of the book then as well. And then also, of course, lovely Temple House, the 1,100-acre estate of the ancient Templars and now the Percival family, where we will be the week before walking the pilgrimage in July of 2024. So for those of you who are interested, we do have, I believe, 3 or 4 rooms left at the Temple House retreat. This is, of course, pictures from last year. We'll be there July 11th to 18th. And it's just a lovely, lovely time. The evenings, we get visits from the Key, from storytellers, from musicians, harpists, poets, etc. We've got a few people on the call here who will be joining us for that. And this will be our second annual. So we enjoyed it so much the first time, we paid a deposit before we even left this time. So let me know if you are interested. Oh, yes. So let's pop out of the screen share and just have a moment. I want to answer any questions that you might have for myself or for Elaine. If you don't mind, if you're healthy and hale, turn on your screen so we can see your lovely faces. And gosh, it's really good to see a lot of you here. Really, really sweet to see you all. So yeah, open floor, questions, reflections, thoughts.
I have a question, Jeremy. About how long will each day take as far as like hours, and how much time will we have to spend like at some of the holy wells and things like that? Like, is there enough time to spend in some of those places, or is it just like we've got to walk?
Great question. So that's the beauty of having the opportunity to walk the Camino twice this year. I got to walk it at 2 different paces. With Dad, we walked on average 4 to 4.5 miles per hour. With Carrie, we were walking 2 to 2.25 per hour, partly because she was dealing with shin splints and other injuries, and also because we really wanted to connect. Keeping in mind, when I walked with my father in March, this was only like 5 or 6 months after Ayla had passed, and so like just had so much to work out. So like moving strong, hard, fast was really, really important part of the practice. Then flip to the fall, walking with Carrie, it was really about being together and really experiencing all the shrines, all the churches, all the ancient Celtic sites that we were walking through. So something I learned from walking both of those is, 1, I don't always want to walk with the person I'm walking with. 2, that everybody moves at a different pace. So how I've been problem solving with that is, that's why I'm going over in February to record this route. So like River, you've worked on a few ecological projects with me, and you're familiar with the field maps, like what we use, so you can see like where are all the endangered birds and where are the wetlands and where are the things. So what I'm producing inside of ArcGIS Pro will then be a free download for everyone that's walking it. And then that will make it really easy for me to share that with any of the Irish organizations that may want to help pick this up later. That being said, now I can answer your question more directly, in that everyone will be able to have your phone on airplane mode and off and be able to track where you are on the route. So that said, because I know that I don't always want to walk with everybody, I don't want to be a guide on this pilgrimage in July, I'm walking it as a pilgrimage. I'm going to work on it in February. July is a pilgrimage. I want to be able to walk and go at whatever pace that I want. So we will have our beginning place every day. We'll have our end destination every night. I would like, as a group, to be able to share in prayer and intentions in the morning and then also reflections in the evening. However, because of going over in February to record this route, you can move at whatever pace you want. You can stop and spend 2 hours at a well if you want. You could jog portions of it if you want. You know, that's what I'm setting it up so it can really be up to each individual how they want to connect with the Tóchar. And so, yes, there'll be plenty of time. And then that also means it removes pressure from if you and I are walking together, River, and I stop at a holy well and you're sitting there like, I really want a sandwich. That next town's still 2 hours away. Like, I need a sandwich, you know, like you don't have to wait for me. You can continue on your way. And then I can have whatever rapport and revelation with the Holy Spring that avails itself.
How does that work though with, so like if I don't finish where the plan is to finish for the day, does that mean like the next day we all start at the same place and like I might have missed part of that trail if I didn't completely finish it? Is that how that works? Do you understand?
No, I think in that regard, like it's gonna be best to finish each segment. I mean,
Okay.
Think of it this way. We have breakfast in the morning, maybe share some prayers, and then you're walking. So 12 miles, if you're walking at the slowest pace that Carrie and I did, 2 miles per hour, you're going to have finished your segment in 6 hours, 8 hours max. And that's giving you plenty of time for doing whatever along the way. So that's how, like, the places where we start and finish, everyone will need to do that, whether you do it in 4 hours or 6 hours, 8 hours, 2 hours, you know, whatever it might be.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
Where are the stays each night?
Yeah, so where the end point of each stage is essentially ending at where we're going to stay. There's only one time where we're going to be picked up by some sort of public, or not public, but a transportation from our accommodation to bring us to the place, because there just was nothing that would accommodate more than like 2 to 4 people within that area. So yeah, so we'll be basically walking directly to where we're staying.
And what type of places, like guest houses or?
They vary. Some of them are guest houses, some of them are B&Bs. One is a hostel, which is like a combination. It has some private rooms and then some like bunkhouse kind of space. And there's one place that's a lodge. I would call it a hotel. The place in Knock is sort of like a cross between a hostel and a hotel. Everyone would have a shared room unless you want to pay some extra to get a room on your own. And, you know, that's where I just need to know, you know, if you're planning to come, like what specifically people's needs are, so that one, you know, the price can be in respect to whatever the extra cost might be, you know, because like when my dad and I walked the Camino, the first 4 nights we stayed in the albergues, which are like basically hostels, and everybody's piled up and you listen to everybody snoring all night. And after the 3rd or 4th night, Dad's like, I'm not doing that anymore. We're getting our own room every night. So, you know, but in this case, we have less options because there's not as many accommodations along the way. So basically, there's a few places where there's a couple options, but in general, like we're all going to like 1 or 2 places that are right next to each other, and then we'll just make do. I mean, some people here that will be joining us are probably happy to bring like a little small sleeping bag and throw it out on a couch or something, you know, but you know, basically setting it up so that people don't have to do that if they don't want to. And then most of the places that will stay, either A, will provide us with breakfast. Some of them are providing us with dinner, and places that do not, like whatever end up estimating the rough cost per person to do this walk, we'll just include some money in that. And then I'll get my folks to stop at little groceries along the way and just pick up things so that we can all make a meal together that evening at wherever we're staying. Some places though, there'll be like literally a restaurant or a pub right next door. So you can just pop over and get a bowl of Irish stew or some fish and chips or salad or something like that. So it's just going to vary. And again, that's why I'm doing this walk in February, is to really hash out those details. Like, what are all the places that we pass along the way that provide food, tea, coffee, snacks, pastries, water? You know, where are the wells that are potable water versus waters where we don't know if it's potable, you know, things like that.
So the only thing we'll need to be carrying on our backs for the day is just like water and snacks and rain gear.
Yeah, so, you know, for everyone that comes, I will send out a packing list. I was able to get my Camino pack for both March, so very similar weather to what we'll be sitting with here in July. I will send out the packing list, which got me to 14.2 pounds, and that was everything I needed for the 3 weeks. And again, we're looking at 8 days here. So for those of you who are going to be at Temple House, Sam will basically bring all those bags to us at the end in some way or another. Those details are being arranged, but we're not going to be, like, my parents are driving a support vehicle. They're not driving a support RV or van. Like, it's going to be like one of those 7-seaters like we got a few years ago when we went over to Ireland. So we're not going to be having a bunch of bags that we're piling into a car. Like, everybody's carrying your things on your back. If you were there for Temple House or you're doing stuff afterwards, like, we'll get all your stuff to the end so that you'll be able to do. But again, packing lists on how to refine everything down to like what the needs are. I think that in the chat room that Lumi was asking about injury. You know, if somebody gets hurt along the way, that is why we have the support vehicle. Is in case somebody gets to a point where they just can't, they can call my folks and get picked up, and then taken to our next destination, and then we can sort out a problem solving from there in terms of what would be next for that particular person. Now, that said, Lumi also, when we walked the Camino in Portugal in October, I mean, she had massive shin splints and was able to actually utilize that as like a fire to rise from and to evolve into. Yeah, somebody volunteered me to carry them. No, I will help. I will help. But yeah, Carrie, do you want to talk a little bit about that experience for you and moving through that and what that helped to refine for you in your own personal journey?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Sorry, my screen is dark today. I'm not feeling very well, so I'm not on screen because I've been blowing my nose all day and through this call. But I'm happy to be on here, and I didn't want to miss it. And so, yeah, the journey, and I was thinking while Jeremy was talking about, the packing and the 14-pound pack and, not having all this stuff. Yes, I had the prayers leading up to starting the walk before we even got to Portugal, but the packing really started to like dial it in, like I'm going on a pilgrimage, and what is really important for me to carry. So it can feel a little intimidating, like, oh my gosh, what am I going to pack and all of that, but it actually helps you refine your experience of like what is really important, what is actually minimally important, and then to be able to surrender to the road, to surrender and be like, and to trust that the pathway is going to carry you, that is going to provide for you. There's a deep spiritual deep spiritual gems in just the process of packing alone to get you started on this journey. And so instead of being intimidated by it, or just like how little you're going to be carry or have with you, look at it as an opportunity to refine and to really get your mind focused and yourself in alignment with this journey that you're undertaking. It is a good beginning. So yeah, my experience, I had really bad shin splints. I mean, the kind where you feel like you're walking on fiery swords, and every step was really painful. I mean, I don't know how to say that. It's just the way it was. On the Camino, we were walking on a lot of cobblestone. And so that was part of it, because we were walking on so many hard surfaces. I don't think that's going to be the case when we were in Ireland. But that was part of my experience on the Camino. And so day 4, I think it was day 3 or 4, starting out the morning, I mean, I was just like in tears. And how am I going to walk 20 miles? This is crazy. And I initially called on my prayer people, Jeremy's mother, my family, and said, "Oh, will you pray for me?" And then, and they were like, "We're getting out the big prayer beads. We're doing it, we're." And then like day 5, I was like, "Oh my God, like, am I going to have to just take a bus and meet Jeremy a day ahead and skip a portion? Because I just don't know. Like, this is crazy." I mean, it was like unrelenting, the pain. And I was just like, oh, okay. And I've said this before when I've been in spiritual crisis, like, who's coming in? Who's coming in to help support me get down the path? And, none other than the Queen herself, Mother Mary. She is deeply embedded on that path. And of course, she is the one that is has provided continuously for 1,000+ years mercy for those that have walked the path and the way. And so it's like, okay, here she is. And she said, "You're not going to do that. You can't lean in. Like, I cannot do this for you. Let me teach you how to pray for yourself." She said, "You have to pray for yourself first." We had spent days in the first days praying for everybody that we knew, all our family and friends, everybody we could think of in our minds that had touched our lives. And of course, so many had really touched our lives with the passing of Ayla and all those that had shown up to be in our journey of grief. And it's just, so many were on our hearts. But I never prayed for myself. I never even thought about it. And so she really helped me find the ways and the words to be able to construct the path in which I walked upon. Because, the path in itself is multidimensional in the sense that, yes, it is cobblestone or dirt or whatever it is that is before you. But so many have laid down their burdens and picked up the truth of love on that path. So many, and that is just embedded in the stones and in the grass and in the dirt and in the way itself. I really came to see the road and Mary as one, and as a very, very ancient teacher. One that was not just something of the past, but that was living and alive and available for me right then and there. And I don't think I know for a fact I would not have made it all the way had I not leaned into Mary. If I had not leaned into prayer. And that is the difference between through hiker and being on a pilgrimage. Who are we calling in to walk with us? What happens when we actually meet our challenges, our weak points, because they reveal themselves to us. And I think they reveal themselves to us early on, whether it is emotional, I don't like to say weakness, but I can't, lack of better word at this moment, some sort of belief that we're carrying that really isn't really doing us any good anymore. These types of, negative self-talk, whatever it is, a body issue such as myself, it will reveal itself. And then how do we engage with the road and the spirit of the way, is what is going to help us to overcome and really rebirth ourselves in the truth of the truth of what we are, which is really just an emanation of. And so I could say so much about it. Thank you, Jeremy, for opening it up for me to speak. And again, sorry, you're just seeing a black screen right now. I'm just talking out of the void, but I guess that is the way it is. It's meant to be. So yeah, I know that we will have struggles and we will have obstacles, and that is the beauty of it. And again, we will have the support team, Mary and George, and they're just beautiful humans, so supportive, prayerful people, that they will be there if we need to call on them. But I would ask first, to call on the road itself. And what's kind of interesting about this in particular is that it is an ancient road, part of which will be reawakening as we're walking it. So it's going to be a deep river in which we're accessing as we're walking on it. And it'll be interesting to see what bubbles up from the deep underground ancient footsteps that have walked that way, and align ourselves to those voices and those prayers and those truths. So I'm very excited to be taking and walking this journey with you all, and it feels very groundbreaking, if you will. And yeah, thanks so much for being on this call with us and being inspired to walk as a pilgrim in Ireland. Thank you, Jeremy.
Yeah, thank you. And I want to be mindful of the time. It is 2:30. So I want to close things off here in a moment, and leave some time if anyone wants to stick on to ask any questions about Temple House Retreat that we'll be doing the week beforehand. But before we do that, Elaine, I'd like to give you the floor again. And if there's any parting words that you'd like to share with us before we close up. And once again, thank you so much for taking some time out of your Sunday evening there in Ireland.
No bother. It's been very interesting, actually, and actually we're intrigued to see how it all goes. Just to, I suppose, reconnect and with the history and the archaeology, as well as, for people that like the spirituality side of it as well. It's fantastic idea, and best wishes with it in February, especially. I think it's a phenomenal route. So yeah, looking forward to more updates on it.
Thank you, Elaine. Thank you for all of your help and connectivity with us. It's been quite lovely working with you.
Thanks for having me.
You betcha. You betcha. All right. Well, so it's a little after 2:30, everyone. So if you need to go, thank you for coming again. And again, I'll plan to report back sometime in March or early April with updates and results, and so we can dive in a little bit further. So otherwise, again, I'll stay on for a few minutes if anyone has any questions about Temple House. So thank you all. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Jeremy. And Lumi, I hope you feel better. Good to see everyone. River. I will be talking with you, and if I don't before your trip, have a blessed trip for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll be thinking about you. All right, it's really touched my heart, so I have to go to work now.